Were there signs Thomas Mair had been planning this attack? Did neighbours or family miss clues that could have saved Jo Cox? Those who knew him, and some had known him 40 years, said he lived such a singular life they only ever spoke of gardening or the weather. Since his grandmother died 20 years ago, he'd lived alone, in isolation and with a history of mental illness. 6 years ago, he spoke to a local newspaper of how volunteering at a park near his home in Bristol had helped. "I can honestly say," he said, "it's done me more good than all the psychotherapy and medication in the world."
Extremely rare for people with mental health conditions involving obsessions and compulsions to be violent, let alone to act on those compulsions and focus their anger on other people. They're much more likely to punish themselves. However, living alone and feeling disconnected from society is fertile soil for extreme ideas, beliefs and hatred.
The tragedy is that Jo Cox was an active campaigner on loneliness, both at Westminster and in Bristol. Police will want to know whether she'd ever encountered Thomas Mair in the constituency or at her monthly surgery. Yesterday morning, Mair left his home at Lowood Lane and walked less than a mile to Market Street and the Bristol Library, where Jo Cox was meeting the public. He stabbed her outside the library with a foot-long hunting knife, kicked her and then shot her. An elderly witness who tried to intervene was injured before Mair walked away. 2 police officers pursued him through Bristol. He was eventually arrested in Rysdale Avenue.
I can't say exactly what it was, but I definitely Britain first is what he said when he was shouting. He shouted it at least twice.
There are reports Thomas Mair was linked to far-right extremism. The British far-right group Britain First denied he was ever a member. But as a young man, it said he was a past subscriber to the South African Patriot magazine, a neo-Nazi publication. And it's reported that for years he was a supporter of the National Alliance, one of the biggest neo-Nazi groups in the United States. An American group monitoring their activities has already published receipts which they say show that in 1999 he purchased a manual, a do-it-yourself book that included instructions on how to make a handgun.
Those receipts appear to be genuine, appeared to be in the weeks after the first neo-Nazi bombing spree that had been inspired by the internet in 1999, and appear to show instructions for making terrorist materials strictly using the internet and sort of homeware and easily purchasable materials.
Mental illness, extremism, misogyny, or all of it combined? It's too early to point to any motive, but what we do know is that very few people really knew Thomas Mair. Christian Fraser, BBC News.